So next up is Olli Harjola from Facepalm Games, and he's gonna talk about uh, bad tech. No.
No, not really bad tech, but anyway, about tech and game design.
Yeah, tech and game design.
Yeah, so my talk is called Good Tool and Bad Master, and it's about tech and game design. So anyway, I'm a designer, programmer, artist, and founder at Facepalm Games, and I've been trying to make games since I was like 7 years old or something. I started by making some labyrinths at kindergarten, and then I started programming at some point. Anyway, now I'm other half of Facepalm Games, and we are two dudes based in Helsinki, and we also have two freelancers, Carlo Castellano, who is our audio guy, and Tom Hubert, who is our narrative designer. He used to work on Penumbra series, and Facepalm Games is perhaps the worst name ever. Anyway, we are working full-time on a game called The Swapper. I'm going to show you the game now. So yeah, this is about 1 year old trailer, and the game itself is about exploration and puzzle solving. It takes place at the space station, and it tackles some metaphysical themes, and the art is built using clay and other real-life materials. I don't know, I don't have any audio here, but anyway, we have tried to make the game very atmospheric, and our other design goal for us is to go very deep with the mechanics and so on. Anyway, the game is coming out in maybe 2013 to PC and Mac. So yeah, that is the Swapper, and the game has been inspired by some films like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Solaris, and a novel called The Living Soul about a brain living in a glass jar. And as I said, the art is made using clay and other found objects and stuff. And it's backed by indie fund, which consists of guys like Kelly Santiago, who used to work at that game company, and games like Flow, Flower, and Journey, and John the Blow, who made Braid and the creators World Goo. And it has been on some festivals. It's next going to be in PAX 10 in Penny Arcade Expo in about 30 days. Anyway, my presentation, I first thought I could create a pre-modem for this Swapper. And I thought it would be pretty interesting to do something like that, but on the other hand, it's, I don't know, like, yeah, pre-modems, they get pretty more valuable and more interesting as time passes, because planning is super hard. And also, they are honest by nature, because you can't tell, like, okay, everything we did was perfect planned, and we had everything went perfectly and so on. And yeah, I don't know if these are actually that useful, because they teach some generic lessons, but apart from those lessons, those modems really can't be applied to that many games. When somebody does something, it doesn't transfer that well to other projects. Anyway, they still teach some general lessons when you look at them as a whole. For example, there's no single correct way to do things, as I said, and what worked for someone might not work for you. And also, lots of work and tears might be needed to achieve something. And luck plays a vital role. And also, timing is very important. And we underestimate complexness. Has somebody ever heard of feature creep? So I thought I could instead talk about something I find more interesting. I don't know if this is more interesting to anybody else, but to me, as a game designer, I find talking about something like this more valuable and so on. So electronic games don't exist without tech, but tech itself can't make a game, though it can break one. And there's a book called A Theory of Fun for Game Designers. It's a pretty good book, and it defines games as a combination of presentation and gameplay. And that's not only when we are talking about electronic games, but also games in general, like chess. So chess is a game that has some presentation. There is, for example, pieces are called kings and queens and soldiers. And presentation in general, it's the art and audio and story and everything that kind of gives the game some kind of theme. And gameplay is the rules and systems that define the game. And tech is connected both. And tech itself might be a limitation, but it doesn't need to be. And limitations are sometimes very good, because limitations also inspire, and they make it easier to design something, because otherwise you could explore anything. And I think this presentation really applies to independent developers, because they can really innovate with tech, but they also have some more restrictions than some big budget stuff. But anyway, indies still have the ability to do more risky stuff than big companies. And there are a few ways to approach tech. You can either improve existing ideas or create something new. For example, a mouse. Mouse is a new input method. I don't know if this is super like academic definition, but anyway, this is what I'm going to use here in this talk. So I'm more interested in creating new games than improving existing stuff, like building better shadow algorithms, even though that's also very interesting, but I find game design even more valuable and interesting. So I was talking previously about limits, and tech definitely is giving us many limits. And for example, there was a guy from 2K Games this Monday who told that to really get new genres and new experiences in games, we would need to approach photorealistic graphics. I think this is totally bullshit, because realism is super hard. And for example, let's think about a game that has some gameplay about human interaction, like it would be a game about talking to people or something, and just the ideal kind of game like this. This is totally like hypothetical. It's not possible to create this game, but anyway, for such a game, we would need visuals, of course, so we would need superb animation for body and faces and everything, and that is something that's still not there yet. And I think it's going to take at least a few decades, but I don't know. It's really hard to estimate anything. I don't know if it's a smart idea to do that anyway. So then we would need realistic rendering, which is much more possible, and also tons of assets. So in general, it would need tons of resources and money and everything. And also for input, if we wanted to make a very interesting game about this, we would probably need gesture recognition and speech recognition and maybe emotion recognition, which would be like that the game could feel how the player feels. And again, this is something that's not possible, and it's perhaps never possible, at least during our lifetime. But also for AI, we would need tons of stuff. For example, the conversation would need to be procedural or something for such game. And again, yeah, this is super hard and super expensive, and especially AI is something that people are pretty pessimistic about, because there has not been huge development in the last decades. And for audio, we need speech synthesis. This is again something that would be possible. But yeah, anyway, that's on Jesus Pi. And there are some other problems. That these are more game design problems. We somehow need to add meaning to this game. And if you have a game that's totally free, then there is non-linear narrative. And I go to argue that games that have a procedural narrative are not going to be as good as... Okay, this is again a question about... I mean, this is very thing that can be approached in very different directions, but in general, games with procedural narrative aren't that meaningful. They can't really create... Yeah, anyway, it's really hard to build procedural stuff that actually says something. And there's also the fact that there's too much freedom, which again comes with this kind of stuff. And this leads to too much noise. And then it would be almost impossible to study such system, also for the players, but also for the designers. So I don't know how one could create a game using such tech. But anyway, this was totally theoretical, and it sounds a lot like real life. Like, yeah. And also there's the problem that when you build something that is very realistic, everything else is going to stand out if it's not on the same par. And this also applies to polishment. For example, you have great graphics but horrible animation. The animation is going to look even more horrible than it would look with just standard graphics. And such a game would be pretty interesting as an experience, but horrible for game designers. And there are some technical challenges. So yeah, let's move on. I'm sorry, this is kind of pessimistic, but that's the truth, maybe. I think perhaps game strength lies elsewhere. It lies more in the ways games can be designed and so on. So that's maybe at least thing in which indies should focus on. And I'm going to talk about some interesting uses of existing tech, because that's something actually practical and something that can be useful to people. So it is also hard, but it's also affordable to indies, and it's their strength because they have so much more freedom than big companies. And I'm going to show you a few examples of these things that can be done when we approach tech by trying to find new ways to use tech instead of just trying to make tech better. So there's motion control, which has been pretty popular thing and really marketed in the last few years. But there are some problems with this again. We need to somehow translate body movement to input, and there are a few different ways to approach this. For example, we could just translate the movements directly to the game, so if I do something, also my body in the game moves. Or then we can have some kind of symbols and language between the game and the user. But then there's the problem that we somehow need to teach that language to the users, so it becomes a design challenge. And also there's precision issues in most techniques, and they are not perfect yet. So there's one interesting game that takes a nice approach to this, and we are going to showcase it with Julie and Tim. And yeah, it's called Johann Sebastian Joust. We actually need third person, so if somebody wants to.
Audio. We want audio.
We want audio. Is there tech guys anywhere? So anyway, this game is played using these PlayStation Move controllers. And it's a game that's probably inspired by a folk game that is about having a spoon in your mouth and an egg in the spoon. And then you have to drop the other player's egg. Or not really on your mouth, but maybe on your hand or something. Anyway.
But we just need some audio.
Yeah, we need audio, and just a second. I have no idea. You can maybe put the mic on the computer.
Shouldn't it be like an audio thing? Like
yeah, tech is nice.
I found it.
All right. So.
And then. Just to see.
So this game has been selected, done pretty many events, and it has won some awards. But it's not out yet.
No.
It's like super secret stuff for
we
some
didn't ask for permission to show
yeah.
it, so don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
We still need audio. It's not playing. I plugged it in.
I think there's the mixing console somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a game based on audio, so you're gonna need the audio. So
It's a pretty decent mic. You can't work on that?
what? Yeah. Oh, that's not good enough. No. We there should be audio.
Okay. In the meantime, I can show you something interesting. There's this Move game, but actually, yeah, this also needs audio, but it's pretty awesome.
What? I got this, but it doesn't play anything.
So this is it's not a Move game, it's a Kinect game. And it's called Kinect Star Wars.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, we have audio now, so I can put off this advertisement.
Can you turn it off just a bit?
So this game was made in Nordic Games, and actually this guy here, he is organizing that. So it's a game jam game, and it's made in a few days originally.
But can I tell something about the game?
Yeah, sure, you can also.
Copenhagen, we're from a bunch of people making a lot of games, not really using technology. Also make like come up with new full games, like you play tag and you can play all the time. Come up with a lot of new games. And this is one of the games but this game is kind of a motion control game. It's called Joust, but it's not really about jousting anymore. It's about kind of holding your controller steady, and whenever I move it too much, it shakes and I die. So if we just install the game, I think we'll get it pretty fast. If you just press button.
Yeah, one of the beautiful things about this game is that it's very easy to learn, but it's very hard to master.
So now, if I shake my controller too much, then we'll die. So it's basically a slow motion fighting game. If you move too fast, so if you move too fast, then you're gonna die. So it's basically a slow motion fighting game. And when the music speeds up, you can move faster. Like that. So, now you learn the game. Then if you can play. If you just enter again.
Get ready to charge. Go!
That happens all the time.
Get ready to charge. Go!
You moved. And one of the beautiful things about this game is that it often becomes really violent. And we've played like a couple of sessions where people actually ended up in hospitals. More volunteers? Yes. And the thing is, like, a great part of this game is that there are not a lot of rules, which means that it's among the players that make their own rules.
Go!
It's quite sensitive. Yeah. It's quite sensitive.
Have to listen to the music.
Yeah, you want to keep it here because you get flickering, so you get feedback if you're moving it too much. You drive it.
Yeah, anyway, I like the way this presentation turned out. So we can play a few rounds. It's okay.
Anyone else
So,
who wants
yeah.
to try?
We also
You want to try?
Yeah.
that's also a pretty good game.
Mm, yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't
Yeah.
bring the rest of the moose controls we had at home.
I don't know.
So we only have 3 this time around.
It's up to you.
Yeah.
It's,
There's also a funny part of revenge in this because people they start to get really aggressive at one point and do like this guy did and just basically attack whoever and kill him on the way.
Get ready to charge. Go!
Yeah, and also these controllers, they are super hard. You can't really break them, or can you? I don't know. So anyway, maybe one round if somebody wants to play.
Can we do a bit of advertising
About what?
about tomorrow?
Yeah, why not?
We're actually, Tim and I, we're going to give a talk tomorrow at 10 about game jams. And this game was developed, yeah, I know, it's really weird. Are you sleeping here? Then we're going to come around and wake you up. Just because. Yeah, I don't know really why we chose that. It was created at Nordic Game Jam in 2011. And that's what we're going to talk about. So we might actually going to play a round of Joust as well tomorrow.
yeah,
And if you guys have,
about the weird
if you have any move controls, please bring them. Because then we can like turn this
Yeah.
place into a party.
ready to charge.
It's gonna work.
Go.
Oh, you're cheating.
No, that's not cheating.
You're cheating.
Oh, yeah, it didn't work.
Wow! You good!
Yeah.
I moved too fast.
It's like an all-time winner here.
Get ready to charge. Go.
The blind sex party game.
What? It didn't
No,
say.
I know- I
It
know.
didn't say. Oh.
Yeah, but isn't it Darkroom sex games? Yeah, no, Darkroom sex games. Yeah, because that's made a Naughty Game Jam 2010. Yeah. But it's on the Wii, and the problem is we didn't bring Wii controllers. Otherwise, we were gonna play that as well.
We are gonna play Darkroom sex games tomorrow.
Oh, we did. Yeah, but we're gonna play it on the keyboard. Or what are we doing?
We're playing the keyboard version.
The keyboard version.
It will be very awkward.
So you're gonna be there, Chen?
Yeah. Anyway, thanks a lot, Tim and Julie.
Back to Olli.
You want some now?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, thanks. So, yeah, let's get back to the boring part. This game is using the simplest possible input. It's like technically super simple. What this is, this game is using acceleration from the controller and one button, so it's not really based around any technical challenges. And also, the players recreate their own game, so it's really moving the responsibility to players from the game itself. And that's probably what makes it super interesting, and also that there is this hyper photorealistic real-life graphics and everything. Also, the audio is pretty nice. So, yeah, next I'm gonna talk about visuals. And there are some problems with visuals as well, because not everybody can create art. Okay, this is something we can argue, but anyway, and art is expensive, and there's still a long way to the quality of non-real-time CGI. This is probably not a problem, but it's a problem for some kind of games. And there are some solutions like totally ditch the visuals, or don't aim for realism, or you can just try to innovate, for example, by looking at demos, because I see demos have some really interesting graphical stuff going on that's not really yet in games. There are a few examples of games with nice demo kind of graphics, but in general games have really generic and standard style often. Yeah, and then you can also just deal with it. There's a game called Sexy Hiking, and the game looks pretty horrible, but it's actually a very cool game. So this is the title screen, and this is the game itself. Yeah, it's called Sexy Hiking, and it's a great game. Anyway, so in this game, the developer is actually using the graphics to make the game better by making the graphics horrible. Yeah, and then there is also my own horn-tooting example of the Swapper's clay-based art. So the art style is a combination of digitized clay models and also lots of post-processing. But in general, it's very technically simple, even though everybody thinks that it's some super complicated secret thing that's going on there. But actually, it's using nothing innovative tech-wise. And the game looks like this. And why did I do this? Because I suck at 3D modeling. Also, I like creating stuff with my hands, and perhaps it makes the game stand out because it's something that's not used in games so often, and also it makes much simpler writing the renderer and everything, because for some reason I decided that it's a smart idea to write everything on my own. So the game is totally non-physically based rendering, or the game's rendering is totally non-physically based. I think there is a trend at the moment to aim for super realism, especially in the kind of like graphics industry and conferences like SIGGRAPH. And it's totally okay, but in this case I approached it from totally different direction. I didn't even try to do anything that would be real looking or so on. So if it looks real, it's just a side product of this process. And what is beautiful about this is that okay, I'm gonna explain the process first. So we create some models of clay, and then we take photographs of them from with light coming from 4 different directions, and also one with light coming from every direction. So it's basically just the color of the object. And using these pictures, we can generate some normal maps. If somebody knows what it means, I think maybe somebody here. And the beautiful thing about this is that normally for lots of these things that I get using this process, we would need really complicated shaders and tech. But in this case, we can have the self-shadowing and like transparency if we have, for example, leaves that let light pass through them, and so on, and ambient occlusion, which means that some places that are like covered, they get less ambient light, so they look darker. So everything this comes through this process, and it doesn't need to be added afterwards in the rendering. And it's using super simple tech, like the most standard formula ever for lighting. And of course, there's lots of information lost using this process, but the level designer can fix that, and it's not really a problem because most players can't notice it. Of course, if somebody has been programming graphics for 10 years, it's probably going to be very visible that there are some artifacts and so on. But in general, it works pretty well. And it's also nice because it's hard to redo the assets, and I'm too perfectionist for this stuff, so I can't really do that, and so we save time. And yeah, it looks like this. For example, here you see some real rocks on the background, or on the foreground actually, and they are just digitized. So we don't need to model this everything. And it's composed of small pieces, so we don't create these whole scenes. Just like, for example, this piece here is actually repeated here, you can see it. It's a stupid thing. But anyway, let's talk about AI. AI is super complex. And I think if our goal is to achieve very believable behavior, there's one way to get around this, and it's to totally ditch AI. There's a device called Mechanical Turk, or T-Turk, that was a kind of like fake chess-playing machine a few hundred years ago. It used to go around the world, and people used to play against it, and they were just like, how can somebody create a machine like this? And actually the truth was that there was a small guy inside the machine who was playing the chess game. So this is kind of similar approach. So let the people be the AI. And there's also some challenges attached to multiplayer, the technical side. For example, we can't really get around physics laws, so there's always going to be some lag in multiplayer games. And also griefing, which means just like trolling in games. So it can be very annoying to other players, and also it often breaks the game's fiction and immersion. For example, if there is a game about walking in a city at night and suddenly there is a clown walking and jumping up and down, and the game should be about something beautiful like a romance, it's going to be pretty weird. But okay, this is not something that multiplayer games too often do, but anyway. There are a few solutions to griefing, like kick and ban systems, which kind of are like outsourcing the whole thing to the players. So it's again a nice, elegant solution that doesn't need any too complicated tech. Or then we can limit interaction, and this is going to be my next example, or examples. There are games called Journey and Way, and they are actually connected. The same people used to work on both games. So Journey and Way, they are both games about interaction between two players, and they limit the interaction by removing chat and most means of communication, and that's actually what makes the games very interesting. I'm going to show you this game called Way. So Way is a puzzle platformer for two players, and in the game you can control the whole body of the character, So what happens in the game is that the other player has some information he has transferred to the other player, so the players need to invent a common language. And the game, after you have played it, it just feels like you are friends with the person who you played it with. It's the same with Journey. But anyway, the game itself doesn't look that exciting, but when you play it, you figure out that it's just super elegant design and has some really nice solutions to problems. Yeah, the game is available online, so yeah, it's makeyourway.com. I'm just repeating what she said so that everybody can hear it. And the game, I don't know if it's maybe coming in some better form in the future. I don't know. But anyway, Journey was the best-selling PS3 PSN game at some point or something, or at least the fastest-selling. And it's gotten very good reviews and everything. Anyway, both of these games want players by letting them build their own language, and that's the main thing about the games and what makes them different from many other games. And I'm gonna conclude my presentation by telling you what is common about all these examples. There's the idea of building something interesting with familiar tech, so we are not really doing something technically complex, even though it might look like it is. And also one could argue that these are not really Excel solutions, but it's not really a problem. They are still elegant game design, or not really, okay, everything is not game design what I talk about, but they are solutions to the problem of making interesting games. And they also add some kind of human element to the games, especially Joust, because it's mostly about the interaction between people. The game itself is just a very simple thing. And even if that element is not directly noticed by players, I would say that it adds something special and can play an important role in the final experience. Yeah, human element. And thank you. I hope this was inspiring to you, and so on. I don't know if this is a talk after which people ask tons of questions, but anyway, if you want to ask something, go on. Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Olli, for the interesting talk and the demonstrations. So are there any questions for Olli?
Okay.
Anything?
Yeah. I kind of was expecting this with this very unpractical and theoretical and weird talk. But yeah, okay. Thanks guys for your time and so on.
Okay.